Hello and welcome to the May 9th, 2020 edition of Rant-Om Thoughts. This is Charles Bird. Well, some very encouraging news to come out of 10th Street Place, Modesto's City Hall. This is a statement from Mayor Ted Brandvold. This was sent May 5th. It reads, "I hope every Modesto citizen is well this morning. I'd like to start by thanking each of you for your efforts to stay at home and socially distance while we flatten the COVID-19 curve. I know that it hasn't been easy, but it has been heartening to watch Modesto's residents band together and support one another during these past 2 challenging weeks. Great job, Modesto. Every mayor feels the economic pain this disease has caused their community. I wholeheartedly support our local businesses, which serve both Modesto and surrounding communities. The time has come to fully reopen our businesses before they are devastated beyond repair. I will be pushing my colleagues to allow our local businesses to fully reopen immediately with some very common sense adaptations. There is daylight on the near horizon, and I urge everyone to continue working together to find solutions which keep our community safe and fruitful." Way to go, Mr. Mayor, way to go. Yeah. I've full disclosure, I voted for him in 2015. I was disappointed that he wasn't able to follow through on this ambitious 90-day plan that he ran on. I understand though that the reason why it didn't happen was because it did target sacred cows like the McHenry Mansion and the municipal golf courses and the Modesto Nuts corporate welfare, but that statement there that really revived my confidence in the man, and he's up for re-election in November, and he will be getting my vote. As I noted in a previous video, most of the voices, though not all, but most of the voices who are calling for a total lockdown and wanting to make it permanent tend to come from the left. But there are also people who are quote unquote conservative who also favor the lockdown for reasons that make sense only to them. But still, I wondered, are there any dissident voices on the left? Is there anyone who on the political left who is who's alarmed at all by the attacks on civil liberties, or or at least the really messed up cultural changes that are coming out of this? Well, a few days ago, while I was looking around for news stories to share on my Facebook page, I came across a video on YouTube, a well-known man of the left, Not only that, but this is a guy who likes to see himself as pro-science. You know, likes to see himself as pro-science, likes to believe that the quote-unquote science is settled on matters of such questions as when life begins, evolution, climate change, etc. So it was a very refreshing surprise to see this coming from him, and to see it coming from a celebrity, since it seems like most of Hollywood these days are, giving us these self-righteous lectures on how we're all in this together. It was very refreshing to hear this from him, and this man is Bill Maher. Yeah, Bill Maher telling us to go outside, get some sunshine, breathe fresh air, and reclaim our lives. And I am glad to see that he's on our side in this. That is very very encouraging. Yeah. But but yeah, I'll link to the video below. It's a segment for one of the episodes of his HBO show. I mean, this is Bill Maher and it's for HBO, so the language isn't exactly kid friendly, but the sentiment is very welcome. One of my favorite podcasts that I like to listen to at Reason's website is the Soho Forum. And the recent one, the topic of the debate is, the lockdown, whether or not to, to reopen the economy. And I really think that people on both sides of this issue should really take some pointers from the two gentlemen participating in this debate. They aren't screaming at each other. They aren't cussing each other out. They aren't calling each other names or accusing each other of wanting people to die. And, it's worth listening to. I'll link to that below as well. Well, now it is official. Justin Amash really is running for president. And he's trying to get the Libertarian Party nomination. Gee whiz. Well, because there might be a postponed physical convention and a postponed nomination process. If Justin Amash really wants to run for president, he needs to stop acting like this is some T-ball tournament trophy and that he's just entitled to it, to the LP nomination just because he's there. He's got to earn it. And now he has a few more weeks to do that. It's a good step in the right direction that he will be appearing in a debate Saturday. That's what he needs to do. He needs to participate in debates. He needs to do interviews with prominent libertarian podcasters like Dave Smith and Peter Quinones, or maybe even Scott Horton. He needs to answer tough questions, and he needs to address criticisms, both fair and unfair. Now, I'm still sticking with Jacob Hornberger, but that doesn't mean I am anti-Amash. I would still prefer an Amash presidency over a Trump presidency or a Biden presidency, which is why I'm not blasting my Facebook feed with those grotesque Amash as brony memes. You know, and another thing is that there is a very unfair criticism of him floating around. How some people are taking what Justin Amash said about the optics of armed demonstrators at the Michigan State Capitol out of context to make it look like he's opposed to the anti-shutdown protests. And I wish I could say it's just Trumpkins doing that. I wish I could say it's just Adam Kokesh supporters doing that, or Vermin Supreme supporters doing that. Unfortunately, there are some Hornberger supporters doing that, and frankly, it's a little embarrassing. You know, to say that Justin Amash is going to be just another Bill Weld, I mean, it's an unfair criticism. It's, you know, they're ignoring the man's accomplishments and record in Congress. Still, I'm gonna monitor the situation as closely as I can. See how things turn out. Still sticking with Jacob Hornberger, but if Justin Amash gets the LP nod, then he'll be the one getting my vote in November for president. Okay. At the beginning of 2019, I decided to make it a kind of a self-improvement goal to go through the entire 32 book politically incorrect guide series. I finally finished the series earlier this week. There is going to be a forthcoming 33rd volume of the Politically Incorrect Guide to Israel, but that never got released or finished. I don't really know what happened with that. But rather than go through each book one by one, I'm just going to go through the ones that I really like, the ones that I recommend, and the ones that were not so good. All right. We'll start with my absolute favorite of the series, the one that actually the very first one, The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History by Dr. Thomas Woods. You know, what I really love about this book, my favorite part of it, is that even though Woods never mentions George W. Bush in this volume, the intelligent reader, and keep in mind this was written during, you know, the first term of Bush's presidency, but the intelligent reader could read the chapters on Woodrow Wilson and Lyndon Johnson and draw parallels between those two presidents and George W. Bush, and come to the conclusion that George W. Bush was not a conservative Republican, that George W. Bush had the foreign policy of Woodrow Wilson and the domestic policy of LBJ. Yeah, it's really good stuff here. Tom Woods has a podcast that I listen to daily. I highly recommend it. Then you got the Politically Incorrect Guide to Capitalism and the Politically Correct Guide to the Great Depression and the New Deal, both by Robert P. Murphy. Excellent work. This is done by a guy who also does a great podcast called the Bob Murphy Show. And he co-hosts with Dr. Woods another podcast called Contra Krugman, where the two of them, week after week, they take apart Paul Krugman's columns. It's it's fun stuff. And if I can find it, I think I'll link an old video that the two of them did together called "Interview with a Zombie." Which was a lot of fun to watch. But these two books are also a must read. And the Politically Incorrect Guide to the Founding Fathers, and the Politically Incorrect Guide to Real American Heroes by Brion McClanahan of the Abbeville Institute. The Abbeville Institute is a wonderful little site for those of us who are proud of our Southern heritage, and he's a really great historian. He really gets into the their life stories, real American heroes. Sets the record straight on the great men who made America, really made it, and he takes the then in the second half of the book, what he does is he takes the destructive lens of revisionist, deconstructionist history, and turns it on the people that the left establishment wants us to revere as heroes. and some really interesting stuff comes out there. Great book, both of these great works. Politically Incorrect Guide to the Civil War. Why it started, how it started, what both sides really fought for. H.W. Crocker the third. He also gets a little bit even-handed. Talks about the some of the heroic men who were on the Union side. Another wonderful book. Politically Incorrect Guide to the Constitution by Kevin Gutzman. Reputed historian, constitutional expert. He collaborated with Dr. Woods on a couple of things. then Clint Johnson's Politically Incorrect Guide to the South and Why It Will Rise Again. If you're a fan of Southern and Western rural culture, this is a must read. My favorite part in this book is how they talk about the different types of barbecue throughout the South. There's a little bit in there about the history of NASCAR. This story about Jefferson Davis and how he and his wife adopted a black boy and raised him as their own son. Nice little tidbit about George Washington converting one of his sabers into a pruning saw. But yeah, these books are the best in the series. They're an excellent corrective to the Howard Zinn inspired garbage social studies curricula that's being spoon-fed to our youth these days. That teaches young people to have this suicidal resentment for Western and particularly American culture, history, and achievement. And we really need to counter program our youth to this. So if you're homeschooling, make this part of the reading plan. Now onto the not so greats, the ones that I have issues with. Let's start with the Politically Incorrect Guide to the Presidents, Part 1, Washington to Taft, by Larry Schweikart. Now, the book's still worth reading. There are nice little factoids and trivia throughout, like, George Washington's musical tastes, but the problem with Schweikart is that he's a partisan Republican and a Jaffaite, and those biases reek throughout the chapters on the antebellum presidents, the Reconstruction presidents, and especially in the chapter on Abraham Lincoln himself. Now, for those of you who don't know what a Jaffaite is he's a neoconservative thinker who is inspired by the writings of Harry Jaffa. He was a historian and speechwriter. He was instrumental in the founding of the Claremont Institute, and he was notorious for holding Lincoln in such a high esteem that it bordered on idolatry. Like he seriously, with a straight look on his face, would place Abraham Lincoln on the same level as the Hebrew lawgiver Moses and even Jesus Christ himself. And he was very instrumental in preventing Ronald Reagan's appointment of Mel Bradford to the National Endowment of the Humanities, because Mel Bradford, an actual historian, promoted what what the Japhaites, as well as textbook liberals, would call the lost cause myth. But, lost cause is really just the, code for the truth about the War of Northern Aggression, about why the Union really fought it, why the South fought back. And it's from Japhaites. You get the whole narrative that that today's modern Democrat Party is still the Democrat Party of Andrew Jackson and of the 19th century. And that's why black people should vote Republican, and you get to see that influence felt in, say, Dinesh D'Souza's work, where he completely throws the whole history of American political parties and how a political ideology developed in the United States out the window. And he gives us this Harry Jaffa inspired fake history, and tries to tie it into the life and career of Hillary Clinton. Yeah. The Politically Incorrect Guide to the President's Part 2, Wilson to Obama. Now, that is a superior work by Stephen Hayward. Hayward is best known for writing a multiple volume biography of Ronald Reagan. He it is a much better work, but not up to snuff with the books I mentioned at the start of the segment. I mean, there are a few flaws in it. He's overly generous with Harry Truman. Also, he puts a little, too much weight on judicial appointments when grading the presidents on their work. But, couldn't mention Volume 2 without, couldn't mention Volume 1 without getting into Volume 2, and thought I'd mention both books just so I could have an excuse to rail against, Harry Jaffa and his disciples. Oh, another thing about Volume 1 by Schweikart, almost forgot to bring this up, is that Schweikart, like Japhaites and neocons in general, has this tendency to conflate isolationism and non-interventionism, which can get really annoying. Well, for those of us who are well-read and well-informed. Then there's The Politically Incorrect Guide to Immigration by John Zmirak and Al Parada. Now, they say the right things about the issue. I mean, yes, our southern border needs to be physically protected. Yes, we need to go to a more merit-based system. But there's a lot of sycophancy towards Donald Trump in this work. I mean, sorry, it's just, Donald Trump was full of crap when he promised that, promised to build the wall and make Mexico pay for it, and to call that 90 miles of sheet metal fence a border wall is an insult to my intelligence. So, I mean, this one, it's bunk. But the one at the very, very bottom of the pile would be The Politically Incorrect Guide to Jihad by William Kilpatrick. Pamela Geller, Muslims under your bed and in your closet, scaremongering. A fanatical clinging to the flypaper strategy myth, the whole notion that we have to fight them over there so we won't have to fight them over here. The only redeeming trait this book has, though, is it actually does offer some helpful suggestions for combating Sunni extremism in the arena of ideas, which is where the war really needs to be fought more so than physically, because that's how you defeat bad ideas is by competing with good ideas in the marketplace of ideas. Well, that's all I have for this week. This is Charles Bird. I'll see you next time. Think while it's still legal. Reopen America. See ya.